Hey everybody, welcome back, and if this is your first time here, welcome. Today I'm going to go over two things that come from some questions that I got recently. And this is it's probably best suited for newer eDrum players, but certainly I hope anybody watching this can get some tips out of it. Number one, when you first get your kit, open up the owner's manual. And if you don't have a physical copy of it, download it from the manufacturer website. They all have it. Within the first couple of days, I would say make sure that you look at how to set up the kit. Because here's the point. If you don't set up the pads correctly, they're never going to perform well for you, ever. That means pad type, sensitivity, threshold, curve type, all of that plays into exactly how you play. So if you ask another drummer, hey, what do you use for your settings? I don't know if that really means anything because, we all play differently. We all have a different touch on the instrument. We all want something different from the instrument. The first thing is I do trigger type, and I make sure the pad types that I have are set up correctly. Number two is I'll then hit the pad, make sure the trigger type is correct, and then I'll hit the default button, which usually Roland has it set at. And the default is call that ground zero. That gives you a really good idea of what levels everything should be at. From there, start tweaking. Start playing with sensitivity, start playing with threshold, curve type, etc. Make sure your module volume is on 0. You aren't setting the pads for your volume. You're setting them for how you play. So set up the pads correctly. That's number one. Number two, sound modeling. Probably the biggest topic out there. You're all excited. You get the module. You plug it all in. You listen to it and go, that doesn't sound the way it does on Roland site, or talk about like digital drumming. There's so many great sites, Drum Tech, Sweetwater, etc. All of the different sites have a different sound that comes from it. Drum Center of Portsmouth comes to mind, etc. I'm not saying one is better than the other. I certainly have my choices that I go to. When Roland is recording their modules and doing their marketing, they're one of the premier marketers out there. They're setting the signal through USB directly into a PC. So you're hearing it at pristine recording. I don't think they do any tweaking. I truly think you're hearing the module, but you're hearing it optimized. But the real hint, the real thing I want to talk about here, this is from my experience. When you're doing sound modeling, use a good pair of headphones. I can't say this enough. When you're doing your sound modeling, you want to really hear it. You want to hear the module. Let me sidestep for a second because I know I'm talking about tweaking, but we're just talking about sound in general here. When you start with headphones, a really good set of headphones, it sounds amazing. And then you say, hey, I really want to play, I'm playing along with music. So I started with the Roland speaker and, moved up to the Yamahas. Now, there are pros and cons in here. I'm just going to tell you from my experience. Using the Yamaha speakers, first of all, the house shook. It was loud. I mean, I literally had the speakers right in front of the kit. So I had the two speakers blaring at me, or I've had them right behind me. There's still some space in there, and you're dealing with the echo in the room. You're hearing, unless you're in a controlled environment, even if you are in a controlled environment, the room is affecting that sound too. So just try it. Play your module through a set of headphones, play it through a pair of speakers, or a set of speakers, or a speaker. It sounds completely different. So what you choose is all up to you. I'm not saying one is better than the other. Now, if you want my advice, I would say use headphones. I use headphones now. And, the sound is instant, number one. Number two is I can control the volume, and I have a much more controlled environment. Number one. Number two, the quality is so much better. Personal opinion, but it just is. You can get an incredibly elaborate PA system. If you've got the room for it, I'm sure it'll be a ton of fun. I'm not knocking those that do it. But when you're doing sound tweaking, I would recommend, highly recommend, you do it with your headphones plugged into the module, because you really want to hear, how is this thing sounding? And when you're doing your tweaking, I'm talking about setting up the kit and all your sound shaping, your volume of each instrument, your EQ, all of the effects you want or not, the rooms, etc. There's so much in a module to play around with. And to me, whether you're individual, whether you're in a band, whether you're in a church, get the kit to sound the way you as the drummer want to hear it at your module with headphones. Do all of the tweaking there. And then let's say you're in a church. Once you have the kit sounding the way you want, with the volume levels, so your cymbals, mix into the way you play, then you can invite the sound engineer, front of house engineer, say, hey, come on up and hear this. This is my interpretation. This is what I hear. Now, you have to be a little careful here. You don't say, I want that in the house, because front of house engineer is responsible for, you guessed it, the front of the house. How do the drums sound with the band in the room? And it's, 98% of the time, that's out of your hands, and it should be. What I'm saying is, tweaking the sounds in the module says, this is how my ears hear it for the way I play in the way I want it to sound. You then have to hand it over to somebody, and you need to trust them to do that. You're playing live, same thing. If you tweak your module sounds coming through your own home speakers, and then you go to a venue, and now you've got an engineer up front, and you start playing, and immediately you hit them, and they go, ooh, that sounds terrible. That's not how my kit sounds at home. And you may have the same thing if you use headphones at home. But my point is that if you use speakers, you're probably tailoring those speakers, tweaking, that sound based upon it coming out of those speakers in your room. And now you go to a venue, and it's a whole different room with a whole different sound system, etc. So you may bring your sound system as the only sound source, but once you put it in a different environment, it's going to sound different. To me, I think all the tweaking should be done with headphones, directly into your module, listening to it, tweaking it there. Then if you use speakers, I'm going to say 80% of the time, you're probably going to have to tweak that sound differently, because the way you hear it through your headphones is not going to be the way it comes out through the speakers. Again, I have to say, everything I just said is subjective. It's from my experience. Take it at face value. Or I would at least say, use it as a tip. Try it. And as always, let me know in the comments what you think, etc. There is no right, there is no wrong. Music is an art. It's not, you've got to do it this way, and this is the right way, and this is the wrong way. There is no such thing as right way and wrong way. It's whatever way you want to do and to get your sound. I'm just giving you my tips based upon all of my experience playing this instrument. Anyway, as always, thanks for watching. Hope it helps. Have a great one. Catch you next time.